My son-in-law wants to drag my name through the mud because he found out about my little affair. Whoop-de-doo. Anyways, I'm going to walk you through how I handled this idiot.
I remember that incident. It happened 6 months ago. It brought my daughter and me closer than we've been ever since she turned 16. It's been a real fight every now and then between us. We never agree on even the littlest things. It was like she derived pleasure going against my will. And as much as I make the rule, I try as much as possible to consider her. But she outrightly breaks the rules. One time she told me she didn't ask to be born into this world by me, and I had no right to tell her what to do. Yeah, it really broke my heart. I prayed and wished something would happen that would make her realize how wrong she was. It didn't happen as fast as I hoped, and after she graduated from high school, it became a very serious fight. One time she left home for 2 weeks, not responding to my calls, and it left me really worried. None of her friends knew her whereabouts, and if they did, they were definitely loyal enough to not tell me. I don't know what else to do than report it to the police. She got to know about it and she called me immediately, threatening never to come back until I withdrew the complaint. At least tell me where you are, but she refused and hung up. The next day I went to the police and told them everything. Even though I was feeling embarrassed, Laura did not come home after a week. I was sick of worry. I was shocked and grateful when I got home from work and I found her sleeping one day. I asked my housekeep, who told me she got back sour and drunk. It was later I learned that she's gone to Malibu with a stupid boy who attended the same high school as her. Guys, nothing breaks my heart more than having a rebellious child who hates her for the mere reason of bringing her into the world. Maybe it was the absence of a man to call dad. From the onset, it's just been us, just the two of us. Her father had disappeared the moment he learned I was carrying his child, and I've had to take responsibility for her in the past 20 years. Isn't that enough to forget him and not blame me for his absence? I'd made efforts and spent oodles and oodles of money to get her into college, yet she refused. In other words, I don't need college to live. What did I not do to secure her future? She chose her path and I have to respect that, hoping that someday she'll come to her senses. It breaks me that it took a long time before it came to that, and I was dumbfounded when she got home one evening with a young man she called Jimmy. A remarkably built young man. Well, he was blonde, and, his biceps threatening to rip the fabric of his sleeves. Broad shoulders that carried the weight of his heartlessness and greed. His mere presence and the atmosphere was foggy. I tried so hard to keep my calm, waiting to hear about this man from my daughter, and she just merely said it was her fiancé, that she didn't want any drama from me, and yes, you can say I was definitely disappointed. I felt fury erupting from my stomach, and I quickly just gulped a glass of water. I felt a little calm, but with much difficulty I nauseated my disgust, however choking it was. All I said was okay, and I asked why he was here. She asked if she had no right to bring whoever she pleases into the home, and I was so mad at such disrespect. I was further stunned when she said that he was going to actually live with us in the estate and that I should give him a job in the company. If she were not my daughter and were not citizens of the US of A, I'd have gone physical with her and given her a slap for once. One she will always refer back to, just like I've seen in a movie from somewhere, in another place. The slap would leave traces of lines on the victim's cheek, and that was really deserving of my daughter. I maintained a surprisingly calm demeanor as I scooped some grains of rice, opened my mouth wide, and welcomed it to my mouth. I chewed it up and felt it travel right through my esophagus down to my belly, and absent-mindedly I drank up my glass of wine. All the while, the rascal-looking man was not ashamed with the way that he gluttonously emptied his plate of meal. He ate like an uncultured swine, and I felt embarrassed in his stead. I heard myself ask, buddy, do you got a college degree? He was nodding in affirmation when my daughter said that those questions were unnecessary since he was her husband-to-be, and I was in the position to offer him a job. I was compelled to give him the job just to make Laura happy. She enjoys doing the opposite of what it is I ever want her to do. Ever since she clocked 16 years of age, I'd had more difficulty than I did my entire life trying to raise her properly, and she refused to listen. Once I even warned her never to get into a car driven by a teenager, and the next day she got home in a car driven by a boy. I was speechless because it was just a day after I've told her. Anyways, after dinner, I went upstairs into my room. As I peered from my window, I saw them moving into the apartment with Jimmy's belongings. I was ashamed of how shameful it was to have a supposed son-in-law moving into the apartment. I was lost in thought when my phone rang. It was Jonathan on the other end, and he called to know how I was. I told him I was not okay, and he knew at once the reason. All that while, he had been the support I needed mentally to get through the emotional turmoil my daughter had thrown me at ever since she turned 16. Jonathan had, been not just a colleague, but a friend. We got into a romantic relationship officially around the time Laura left home for Malibu, and he was there to soothe and encourage me, and somehow we had coitus. Though it was awkward, and afterward he eventually told me how he felt about me. And ever since then, he was always there and was the strong fulcrum that I needed to pull through. After I told him about Jimmy, he said it was okay. How hard would it be? I mean, since we had enough house in the estate. Besides, I'm in the position of giving him a job to make him a better man. Perhaps he was the right man for my daughter and all of that. So yeah, I loosened up a bit afterward, and we discussed our relationship and how well things were going between us. We even expressed our love for each other once again, as we often do. Update number 1. 60 days later. While in my office, I heard a knock at the door, and it was my receptionist. I was taken back as to when she had ever come to my office during work hours. She doesn't report directly to me, and I was compelled to understand why she would be in my office. I gestured to her to sit, and she did. When I asked her what's wrong, she complained about Jimmy Beacon, the assistant director of the tech unit, making sexual advances towards her. And just like expected, she had come to make an official complaint. I was at a loss for words, and I finally told her I would investigate the matter accordingly. Thankfully, she left my office. I didn't know what to do, but I was grateful I never disclosed the fact that he was my son-in-law-to-be. It would have been a very big embarrassment. This complaint from my receptionist is in addition to the dozens of others from other workers. I was angry about the whole ordeal. Why would a nobody come to live in my house and I give him a job and he decides to sexually harass my workers under my nose? That was the height of disrespect, and I decided I would talk it over with my daughter. This gold digger that she brought was trying to destroy reputations I labored to build, and I was not going to allow it. I was still fuming when Jonathan walked into my office in his habitual manner of not knocking. He locked the door behind him and dropped the files he was having as he observed my mood. He asked what was wrong, and I told him all that I knew, and he was disappointed. But he decided that he would talk to Jimmy while I do the same with my daughter. Later, he told me why he was there. It was strictly business, and he was made an offer by one of the renowned fashion companies called Devil Wears in New York, and he would be leaving the city soon. I wasn't surprised. I'd always known he had an interest in fashion. Besides, he created styles in his sketchbook that never left his person. Styles which he would send across to so many fashion houses, hoping to land a deal, and finally here it was. It was a mature thing to rejoice with him and let him go. Jonathan had been with me from the beginning. Initially, it was hard for him to find his ground, but he was smart and intelligent, and he was where he was as a result of hard work and effort. Most of the times, I wondered if it was his, doggedness or good looks that got me so attracted to him. Though I was sad, I was happy for his success. He'd finally live his dreams. However, I was worried as to know he would manage the relationship. As if he was thinking about the same thing. He promised he would be back after a while, which, he wasn't certain. I knew better than banking on his promises, and I resolved it was better I let him go and pursue his dreams. Besides, nothing really lasts forever. We enjoyed the relationship while it lasted, and I was ready to make whatever sacrifices were needed. He was hurt by this because he was never envisaged that our relationship would not last. He calmly left my office and I did not call him back. 42 years of my life was enough to teach me not to hold anyone back, but to let things go and simply enjoy it while it lasted. Silently, I prayed Laura would come to a realization of what I honestly wasn't sure of, but I knew if she came to the realization, a lot would change in her way. I got home that evening and Jimmy was the first person I met. Laura, as I reckoned, was in the bathroom and I told him about the complaints I'd received from some of my staff, which he denied outrightly. However, I warned him to desist from such else and my daughter would learn about it and the board would take immediate action. He didn't look bothered by what I said. Instead, he went ahead to tell me about his displeasure at having Jonathan speak to him that he had no right to meddle in his affairs. The same way I retorted that he had no right to be standing where he was under my roof. Same way he had no right to enjoy the benefits of living in my house for free. I resolved not to talk to Laura about it. Besides, she would not listen since she was head over heels for Jimmy. She'd probably think I was trying to break up a relationship, and there we would have a round of tongues lashing out hurting words. I often wonder why it is that my own daughter hated me that much. That I can't talk to her like a mother would and she listens. Update number 2. Not up to 2 weeks while I was working my butt off at my office, I get a text from Laura which said, "It's high time Jimmy got his own car." Well, this cracked me up a little and gradually I let out a cruel laughter. My secretary was alarmed and she just kept asking what's the matter. I laughed until I felt my ribs hurt, and then it was followed by a tear. Immediately, I was given a handkerchief to wipe the tears already streaming down my cheeks. I thanked my secretary and asked her to please just, leave, promising I'm going to be okay. She did, and I sat there not saying a word, choked by hatred, anger, bitterness, you name it. I got home that day to meet Laura already waiting at the door for me. I suspected Jimmy might be somewhere else in the house listening to our conversation. She demanded an audience and refused my pleas for a later time due to my fatigue. I was forced to slump into the couch and listen to what she had to say. Never have I ever been asked to buy a car for a total stranger, whom I'm not even pleased with. Anyways, who also lives in my house and whose sake my own daughter was ready to rob me clean. I reminded her how much I had spent a week ago, all for that same Jimmy. For once I told her how much I worked hard to be where I was and would not let some riffraff from some hole-burnt bridge and reap what he did not sow. I made it clear that Jimmy was a gold digger and it would not spend $1 of my hard-earned money for his sake anymore no matter what. This did not go down well with Laura. She honestly refused to listen to all the warnings I gave her, but threatened to leave the house and never come back since I would not do her bidding. Laura swore that she would leave and I would never see her again. In fact, she swore that she would not attend my funeral since I did not have her happiness at heart. I went quiet while she talked, and there was Jimmy walking into the exchange. And before me, he pleaded with Laura not to leave the estate, that he would win my trust eventually. Guys, I just stood up, carried the weight of my sadness and fatigue into my bedroom. And good thing I had my last dinner with Jonathan and I wasn't famished. So I went to sleep. Later, around 2 a.m., I heard tires screeching outside of the building and I looked from my window. It was Laura and Jimmy driving into the compound from wherever they've just been. Presumably a party. I sighed deeply and just got back into bed. Update number 3. Hey guys, it's me again. I was going through a report from my secretary when Jimmy stormed into my office. I was displeased at the behavior, so I ordered him out. But instead he sat down smiling and looking cheerful, and I just wondered what he was up to. He spoke in an unusually calm, respectful manner, which I never expected. In a flash, he drifted into a more condescending, boisterous tone, appraising his ability to unravel mysteries and open up secret hiddens in the midst. I was lost as what the heck he meant. He made some analogy about a married man screwing a woman supposedly in an intimate relationship with another man, which resulted in some loss. Immediately, I cast my mind back to 3 days ago when Ethan, director of production at the company's anniversary celebration, he got himself a bit drunk and lost his way into the hotel room that we got. We were talking, and yes, I was a little tipsy. We both lost control, and yes, we had a fling. And that's all there was to it. The next morning, I told him that what happened was a mistake and should never be referred to in any future conversations that he had. He was going to say the same thing, and that was it. Besides, he was a married man with 2 kids, and I know him to be a loyal husband and father. I was displeased with myself, but one cannot stay mad at yourself forever unless you're into that kind of thing. Even when I told my therapist, she said it's just a fling. Neither of us had envisioned it. However, it's been awkward with Ethan afterward. I noticed the way he looked at me at the board meeting. Though I did not quite make anything out of it, it was enough to make me uncomfortable. I wondered if the incident was what Jimmy was referring to in his dumb analogy. I managed to get in control of my emotions as I asked what the heck he's talking about. He let out this thundering laughter like a male fairy tale character with magical powers over fire and furnace. He began to rattle as to how he had seen Ethan getting into my room and how he had listened to everything that transpired that night. I found myself asking him how he had stayed to listen to all that, and what he did afterward, which he claimed was none of my business. I retorted, this was none of his business either. He said it was his business since he knows the work ethics of our company, and he knew that marital status of Ethan as well. Knew my relationship status with Jonathan and might as well let his mouth run like a tap water. I probably seemed disturbed and fearful as I wiggled in my chair where I sat. Well, he made a tut sound and went ahead to tell me he would not tell anything or anyone about it, and he assured me it's just between the 2 of us and that he simply would not let it slip out. I didn't quite trust him, to be honest with you, as I asked what was in it for him, and he just smiled and said, oh, nothing, that he just came for a chit-chat with his soon-to-be mother-in-law, and then he left. I felt my heart flutter. The minute this gets out, I'll be done. I thought worriedly, and a night fling was going to cost me a lot. I began to think about what to do. Nothing was making a lick of sense, and I felt my temperature starting to raise. My heart skipped a beat for a few minutes before going back to normal. All around me was twirling. I was dizzy. I felt hot in a fully air-conditioned room. The whole day went badly. I could not concentrate, could not eat even while I was hungry, and I felt a lump in my stomach, and all I had was water. Gulping down cups of water, and during dinner I was shocked to find out that Jimmy had prepared it. I was wondering what this man was up to. I could not speak much at the dining table because Jimmy went on about talking and laughing loudly that Laura had to ask if he had won the lottery or something. He simply said he just had a great day and that he just chose to be happy. I knew it was a lie. He's happy because he felt he trapped me in a web that he designed for me. Little did he know what was coming. Update number 4. Guys, when I looked out my window and saw Laura driving out, I exhaled deeply, hoping she left with Jimmy. I didn't want the ill luck of having to storm into him at the sitting table or whatever. So I get ready for work, walked downstairs into the living room, and was glad when I saw just the housekeeper. I went to the dining to have my breakfast, and halfway into sipping my cup of tea was the devil smiling at me. I froze, melted a bit with a flash, and he just smiled and spat out a sarcastic good morning, and said something about how pleasant it is for his mother-in-law to be the first to grace his sight on such a beautiful day. I choked on my tea. He passed me a napkin. I could not utter a word. My mind traveled back to the previous day I cursed. He went ahead to tell me how necessary it was to give him some money to sort out some bills. I realized this is what all this was about, huh? Blackmail. I mustered courage, regained my strength, controlled my breath, and told him that I would not give him a dime. He got mad, but he collected himself, and I told him I didn't have money to throw around since I worked for it, and he should do the same for himself. He sighed and gnarled his teeth at me and made another tut sound. According to him, it was a matter of necessities that I could not avoid, or I would be faced with a shameful consequence. Then he said, it was okay. He reached for his cell phone in his pants pocket, and I peered from my side view as he made some touchings on the screen, and immediately I get a message buzz on my phone. I dropped the napkin, grabbed my phone to see what the heck it was, and I was dumbfounded by what I saw. I said not a word. Immediately, I grabbed my purse and I left for the office. I sat at my table thinking about what to do. Guys, I'm at a loss. How could one be so heartless? Jimmy was bent on ruining me. I was so afraid that I had sent him the money he demanded for. It was quite a whopping sum. But I painfully gave it to him, thinking that was the end of it, and I thought he would stop after that. Well, guys, the thing about blackmail is it never stops. One for more, and so it continues. The next day, he was demanding more money. This went on for a while, and I knew I was getting to my breaking point. Laura barely listens to whatever it is I try to tell her, and she never listened to every single thing I had to say. I got fed up with all of it, so I started devising a means to free myself from the shackles of extortion. A thought flashed through my mind, and I set to work. I summoned Ethan to my office and told him about the new development, and he was more than disturbed than I expected. I showed him the pictures of Jimmy that he sent me that morning, and he was cursing breathlessly. He didn't handle it as well as I envisioned. Being a man, I thought that he would be calm to think about the next step logically, but instead he seemed as though his heart was about to jump from his chest. So I told him he'd have to move to the company's startup in Florida since I was the board chairperson. I didn't have to consult with board members for the decision, and he was willing to move, owning to the fact that his wife also got a job at the Central Hospital, Florida, so he was more than willing to move. It all fell into place as everything was planned out, and he was leaving in 5 days. Later, I called Jimmy to strike a deal. At least come to an agreement as to what it is he wanted exactly, and when he came to my office, he was looking serious. So serious that I wondered what he was up to. However, I didn't ask. Whatever it was, none of my business. I asked him what exactly he would exchange for the pictures that you were using to blackmail me, and without giving it a thought, even for a second, he demanded my estate. Yeah, that's right. This kept me baffled, and I thought he has to be joking. I smiled uncomfortably and repeated the question, thinking perhaps I wasn't clear earlier. He repeated the same thing. He would have my estate in exchange for the pictures, and he was not joking. I saw a beast in the way he smiled, smirked. Nothing about him was pleasant at all. I always knew that he was a gold digger, a greedy person who would do anything to get what he wanted, and I told him outrightly that from the first day he had set his God-forsaken foot in my home, there was something unsettling about him. I told him how much of a greedy jerk that he was, and simply how soon karma would definitely catch up to him. Tear him apart bit by bit, and he'll feel the pain he inflicted on others. I swore and cursed him, and all he said in response was that I should leave with my daughter after giving him the estate, and that he was never even interested in her. This broke my heart. I was going to forgive his insults, his disrespect, his blackmail, and gold digging, but the fact that he just used my daughter broke me. I felt moisture in my eyes, and it all became silent. Even when he walked out of my office, I didn't notice for what seemed like an hour. I was in a state of mental blackout, but I felt tears streaming down my cheeks, which tasted salty. I had no idea about the next step to take, but I didn't know that, there was progress. Unfortunately for Jimmy, I'd recorded the entire conversation. It partly went just as I envisioned, although I'd forgotten to stop recording immediately after the conversation, but it was safely saved, and I was good to get on with the next step, even though I was more hurt knowing that he only used my daughter to make money. I talked to Laura about it later that day, and I was surprised when she responded to my call immediately. Listening to the recording, she looked disappointed and sad. She further told me how she found some dishonest schemes stored up in his phone, and it appears that he goes about robbing people of their lifetime investment and money. We weren't the only ones that he was blackmailing. He had done it to a lot of other people too. He was a scammer, and he lived by extorting people. Laura suggested we call the police on him, and for the first time we were unanimously going to make a decision. I was glad that she was getting back to her senses, and I hoped it remained so. Immediately, we heard him pull up into the garage, and I asked Laura to pretend as if everything was cool. We agreed to steal his phone, and she went into their bedroom and acted normal so Jimmy would not get suspicious. I stayed in my room thinking about what next to do. I heard them leave after a while, and I walked stealthy into the room. Laura had told me where exactly to find it, and I took it. Immediately, I left for the police station. At the station, I told him everything I knew, and he was asked to write a statement, which I did. And I was called back by an officer to write my name and a stipulated space tagged complaint. Immediately, I got done with it. Markson, the officer, seemed fascinated by the name, but did not have the time to ask more about it. There we're ready for an arrest. We got back home only to find Jimmy about to hit Laura with a vase for not telling him where his phone was, and I screamed as the officers just hurriedly handcuffed him. I helped my daughter up and gave her a glass of water. He threatened again to reveal my secret affair with Ethan, which made me laugh, and I told him he had nothing on me anymore. Jonathan had left the company weeks ago, and I cursed his ignorance all these while. He had been in the company and had not seen Jonathan, and it did not cross his mind to find out why. As for Ethan, he was far away in Florida. I'd say it's obvious to him that he had been caught in the same web he designed for me. That night, I was fixing up my bedroom when Laura walked in. Looking frightened, we both made to talk at the same time, but we paused, waiting for who goes first. A mother knows when her child's back. I was bustling with emotions when she said she was sorry for everything that she did. For once, I saw the sincerity and, well, I could see it in her voice. She went on and talked about Malibu. She went there with her classmates from high school, and that's where she met Jimmy. She was sorry for threatening not to attend my funeral, and she was sorry for disrespecting me. She was sorry for being obstinate, and she was sorry for putting me through a lot of pressure. She was specifically naming each and every hardship that she put me through. I maintained an unusual calmness in the air, and I felt tears streaming down my cheeks. I cried. We both cried. For a while, we cried and clung to each other, and that marked the beginning of our relationship. The next morning, we woke up, and I could swear that there was a flood of fresh air sweeping into my room, and it stayed. It was dawn, and I knew that while the sun rose, it would herald a strong mother-daughter relationship that would never be broken by anything. It was a long, hard year, and I was grateful it was finally over. Laura was back to her senses, and I could not be more grateful and happy. Update number 5. Laura was set on making inquiries about college, and she's finally ready to go. I could not be more happy. She decided she would go to Princeton and study business management. I was more than elated when she told me that, and when I got into the heart-to-heart conversation with her, I understand it was Jimmy who had deceived her into thinking that she didn't need college. I was glad she finally came to her senses, and these past few days have been the happiest days of my life. If gratefulness was a person, that would be me. I forgave Laura because she was my daughter and was all that I had. We've been happy ever since, and I'd say at the height of the reconciliation, I get a call from Jonathan, checking up on us, right? We ended the call with an air of something that's unfinished.
Alright guys, this comment section of today's story was so interesting. I'd say a majority of them were just happy that the mother and daughter duo was basically back together and things were going pretty good for them towards the end of the story. However, not everybody was on OP's side. A lot of the people were saying, well, you know what? I mean, at the end of the day, you are a cheater. So you being exposed would not have been the worst thing. I mean, you literally cheated on your boyfriend. Who cares if it's a one-night stand, if it's ongoing? The truth is, it happened. And then other people were arguing, saying, you know what, no, it doesn't work like that. It was a mistake, a drunken mistake, and just using blackmail to get what you want is not the answer. So yes, I understand today's story could be considered everyone sucks here, but I just want to know your opinion. Who do you think is more in the wrong? Let me know in the comment section down below, guys. My name's Mr. Reddito, and I narrate these sort of stories every day. So if you want to be a part of these daily readings, all you have to do is subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys tomorrow, and please remember, it's cool to be kind. See ya!